Revived Thoughts is a production of Revive Studios.
This is Troy and Joel, and you are listening to Revived Thoughts. I think this would qualify as revived conversation. I'm not sure what we qualify this one under, but this episode is to celebrate the fact that Revived Thoughts is now officially 5 years old. 5 years of the old Revived Thoughts podcast.
Yeah. I also just like it as just an excuse to hang out and talk with my friend Troy, you know? I feel like so much of the time we're just talking about, these facts from dead people in life, but it's nice just to...
We're talking in business, we've got all those paperwork and all those big advertising companies we got to work through, and just all the CEOs we've got to talk
Our people calling their
maybe none of those things.
Yeah,
that's okay, so that's not happening at all. But you're right, Joel. Oftentimes when we're together, it's straightforward. Let's get these episodes recorded and do this work. Or it's some kind of controversial Revived Thoughts, conversation where we're arguing over something, and we don't know usually what the other person's we don't know ever what the other person's going to say or what opinion they're going to have before it happens.
5 years, Troy. How does it feel?
It feels good. It feels like it hasn't been 5 years. Like it to me, it still feels like it's only been like 2 or 3. I don't know why that is, but I definitely don't feel like it's been a full 5 years. And when I think of Revived Thoughts, I don't feel like it's that old. It just that's the same age as my son, and in my brain they don't seem like they're the same age. I feel like Revived Thoughts still feels fresh to me. I don't know how you feel about it. Maybe for you it's been like 5 years. Talk about 15, but I don't know.
I feel like it's been 5 years, but I also feel like the thought I had the other day was that I'm really surprised that we've kept it going because I feel like we've had a lot of like life-changing events. I mean, I've had 2 children since we started this show. You've moved to 3 different countries since we started this show.
No, I've moved to 2 different countries. Come on now.
Including America, it's 3 countries you've lived in.
Well, I moved across America. I didn't technically. When we started Revived Thoughts, we started recording Revived Thoughts.
Yeah.
I was in America, but you're right. The first time we talked on the phone about it, I was still in China. So I guess it depends on when you want to consider having started Revived Thoughts.
And so, I feel like a lot of that would shut a lot of podcasts down. To me, I think it's it's a testament just to the source material. Like, it's interesting enough, and it's enjoyable enough, and it's worthwhile enough to do this work because we enjoy it. I feel like if we started a different type of show, that type of show probably would not be running right now. But specifically, Revived Thoughts, it's got staying power.
That's a really good way to say it. We have had lots of ideas throughout the years, Joel. We had a lesser podcast once upon a time, and you're not wrong. I do not think any old idea would have worked. And we definitely, when we started Revive Thoughts, we did not know what we were starting. We had no idea that we basically almost saw this as an audiobook niche. Nobody's doing this. We can fill this audiobook idea almost. We definitely did not foresee becoming mini experts on church history and being able to talk fairly confidently now on a lot of different subjects. We now even the English Civil War doesn't scare us as much as it used to. There was no way I would have known when we started this show that we would be accidentally making ourselves experts in an area that most people really need to know about, but they don't actually know that much about. If you had told me that, I would have been like, no, we're not. We're just doing audiobooks basically.
Yeah, we've kept it going despite... Troy held the fort down here last week. I was out of town on a good trip, Ecuador.
Tell me about Ecuador, Joel, because I am pretty sure the weather is nice there is about all I know about it, and I don't even know if that's true.
No, it's really fascinating. It totally makes sense now that I think about it, but I didn't realize it until I was there. But they're on the equator, right? So sorry, just as a setting here. I work as a missionary videographer, and so we travel a lot to different ministries around the world and make videos about it and such. So I've worked in a lot of Latin America countries over the years, which I enjoy, and that's a topic for a whole nother thing. But Ecuador, again, first time being to Ecuador, it's on the equator, which means, and there, especially the area we were in, which is Rio
Ecuador
Bamba.
Spanish for equator?
Maybe that would make sense. Are you
I
making
thought
that up
Ecuador
right now,
was
or is that a thing?
No, I thought Ecuador was named after the equator. Maybe I made that up at one point and that I believed
I mean,
it. But
now that
that's
you
why
say
I thought
it,
had the
it
name.
sounds kind of obvious, right? Ecuador.
I'm googling it. How we do our best research on this program.
Live Google searches,
okay.
live fact checks.
It is. Yes, Ecuador is in
makes
fact
total
Spanish for
sense.
equator. So all of our Spanish
makes
listeners
sense.
are just being like, of course it's in the equator, guy. Like, duh.
Yeah. Well, so I knew it was on the equator, but I didn't like fully grasp how that affected our days because it's very again. So we're up in the mountains, so it's relatively. It's not like hot. I think of the equator. I think of like Africa. I think of like it's the hottest part of the planet you can be because it gets the most consistent sun year round.
I live 8 degrees south of the equator, and when I lived in Cambodia, I lived 8 degrees north of the equator. And I'm not. In my experience, it's pretty hot. The closer you get to that bad boy, the hotter it gets.
Not the case in Ecuador. It was like 65 every single day, and it stays that way. Like a hot day is like 70 degrees.
For our overseas listeners, that's about 20 degrees Celsius, so it's pretty pleasant comparatively.
Yeah, that's like long sleeve t-shirt weather, right? And it stays that way year round because they don't have seasons. Like it's the sun they have exactly 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark every single day, and the sun rises at 6 a.m. and sets at 6 p.m. every single day. And it doesn't wobble, it doesn't change because it's on the equator. So it's I don't know. I'm so used to like calculating like, oh, in the winter it gets dark a lot faster, or like, oh,
I will say
the
where
sun's
I
gonna
live,
rise
we only
later.
have like about 45 minutes difference like year long.
Okay.
Like I think the sun sets at like 6:08 one time of the year, and then like later on it might set at like 6:38, and I'm not even sure if those are the exact numbers. So I kind of understand that like where I'm living, there is not a huge amount of change in terms of the sun setting or not. It's really, for where I live, the main change is it raining or is it humid or is it dry?
Yeah.
And those are the 3 seasons.
They do get their fair share of the rainy season / less rainy season that they contend with, but because they have a nice, lovely, mild climate, they just have like the most fertile ground. Like, I don't know, I think like literally like on the planet, like they can grow anything, anywhere, anytime, just because the soil is so rich and like the conditions. There's like we have seasonal food in America, like seasonal fruits, but down there every season. There is no season, so you can just grow whatever you want any time of the year, and it grows great. So it was really neat. Had a lot of great food. I just thought it was fun. Again, as a videographer, so I'm always crunching like numbers and sunlight and stuff like that. Like if we start filming here, we'll have enough light to get us through there, and they're all kind of looking at me like I'm crazy because I'm used to having to be able to look up times and stuff for sunsets and sunrises and things like that, and they're like, it's not rocket science. It just the sun goes down at the same time.
It's the same time. That's so interesting, though, because for me, I know that you've been to South Africa. I know that you've been to Egypt. I know that you've been to now Ecuador. I don't know. I think Germany and France is probably like as north as I've heard you go. But I guess it's interesting to me. I never thought about the fact that you would have to be constantly trying to figure out what time of day it is as you went and making sure that
you get real far. I mean, we filmed really remotely north in Canada.
In Canada. I forgot you went to Canada last summer.
Yeah, you can get times where you only have hours of sunlight each day, or vice versa, where it's hours of darkness. It's interesting.
So when are you moving to Ecuador from the sounds of it? I mean, it sounds like you really like Ecuador.
Don't get me wrong. My wife and I always have tried to be intentional about having our hearts open, to go wherever God would lead us. And if he calls us to a country, by all means, we are going to, obey his calling. But nothing tops America, man. America we're always happy to come back home and live here in America. Every country in the world has things that it does better, things that it does worse.
It's funny you say that. So I live in Indonesia, as the listeners probably know. So does my wife, who runs Martyrs and Missionaries, Elise. And we love where we live. We love what we get to do. I feel extremely blessed to do it. But absolutely, like if I was choosing where to live based on comfort, America would be a high contender. Although the prices are getting pretty bad over there, so that would maybe
the prices are ridiculous. No joke.
But I mean, I will say I am where I am because the Lord is in control, not necessarily because I'm here because I found the most comfortable little spot in the earth. I mean, you've been to Indonesia, Joel, so you know some of what it's like over here. But I will say, as much as I love being comfortable, as I wouldn't trade not being where I feel like God has me to be be comfortable in that way. And that is 100%. Although, man, you really made Ecuador sound nice as somebody who's sweating in a hot room as I record these things. Those are those are the temptations where I'm like, oof, if I could be somewhere where it's not always muggy and humid. That sounds like the dream to me. But hey,
I mean, the dream in a lot of ways. You got wonderful climate, lovely, wonderful, cheerful, friendly people. Again, at the most, I mean, you don't have drinkable water, you don't have potable water, you have very intermediate power, electricity relying on. You're probably gonna have chunks of your day with no electricity, but I don't know. When you're with believers, it's always a good time.
Yeah, that's true. Very well said. Well, Joel, I'm glad you had a great time traveling. And Joel, you kind of back to the point on Revived Thoughts there that you made a little earlier. It is amazing that our podcast has survived the number of travels and things. I mean, I think of that year in Cambodia where we were recording into a wardrobe and I was having technical problems like crazy. And you would just patiently sit there and probably play games on your phone or something waiting for me to come back because you knew eventually I'd probably come back. But still, that year alone, and the fact that this podcast survived that year is crazy. I mean, now things are fairly stable. We do still have problems, but it's fairly stable compared to that year.
That's true. Yeah, I wonder how many other podcasts. There's got to be other podcasts out there, but we might be on some leaderboard for podcasts to be recorded with co-hosts in however many various countries.
I will say, I mean, as I keep a pretty good tab on other Christian podcasts, it's just something I do based on our Twitter presence and stuff like that. I don't know any others. I cannot think of any others where especially where it's third world. Like I can think of one other podcast where one host was in America and one was Britain, and they were like kind of cutesy America Britain take, but we're definitely the only ones where it's like I'm literally on a 12-hour difference from you right now, and we have to record. My night's your day and your day is my night. I cannot think of any other shows that's doing that. And you know what, Joel, I can say this, I don't think if we didn't know each other before we started the show, I don't think we could have done it. I think it's purely like you and I have known each other. I have no idea how many years at this point, but it's been a while.
Well, let's do the math. That's 13 years?
Yeah, just shy of 13 years. And so I don't think that if we didn't have that long history of friendship and time together that we would have been able to pull this off at all either. I think that having known each other long before there was a Revived Thoughts really helped us like not have to get too stressed out. You know me. And so when I send you scripts really late, when I should have sent them to you on time, you weren't like surprised that I did that. You were like, that's what I would expect from Troy to put that to the very last minute.
Yeah, our dynamic has suited the longevity well.
All right, Joel. So that was actually going to be one of my. So I had this idea as I was putting the thoughts together, just like some questions for us to kind of explore. And one of my questions for you was, Joel, what is one of the most frustrating things I've ever thrown at you in these 5 years of recording this show? Because I'm sure there have been moments where you were like, Troy, what in the world was that?
So what do you mean by, like, what's an example? What do you mean by the most?
I don't know. Like, either you could go with like an idea I had that was like, why were we doing this? Like when I almost started a book club, and I still think people wrote us in and said we should get that book club going. I'm just saying. Or it could be the most frustrating, like I sent you the most last minute thing possible or something like that. But I'm sure you have something where you were like, this was a moment where Troy, you were like, that was really annoying.
Last minute. So I don't know about, I guess this is a nitpick more about your ambition, which I don't know if is a fair, I don't know, nitpick for our listeners. And maybe you guys picked up on this. One of Troy's greatest attributes and greatest characteristics is he is very self-motivated and very passionate and very driven, but he also thinks very big in ways that maybe aren't sustainable long term with
That's such a nice
things.
way to put that.
Yeah. And this is something I've always known about Troy, and something that has always come up in most of the creative endeavors that we've worked on. I feel like I'm oftentimes the more level grounded, realistic person, and he's the one that always thinks big and takes these big chances and gets all risky. And I feel like it does make a good combo for us, like it's a good duo, because I feel like you need a little bit of balance in that. But I feel like that there was that moment like around year 2 or 3 where you were just wanting to like expand everything, and I was like, I think we're getting stretched. I like where we're at currently. We got Mars and Missionaries, we got Revive Thoughts, and we're able to put our thoughts and energy into those shows.
That's true.
We did have a show called Revive Radio, which is great, and it has it only had 6 episodes?
No, it was almost 20, and Elise ran it. Wow. And to be honest, if there's a show that I would bring back,
if there's a show that's coming back, it's Revived Radio. Yeah,
Revived Radio. It was such a good idea. It was such a good pairing with Revive Thoughts, and people loved it.
But Elise we have so much good feedback on Revived Radio.
Yeah, but Elise had the dream of doing Martyrs and Missionaries, and could not do both, and she really wanted. And Martyrs and Missionaries has obviously done very, very. It's been explosive and great. And so I'm really glad she did it. But I still will get the occasional email like, hey, I finished Revived Radio. When's the next episode coming out? And I'm like, I wish I could bring it back. I loved Revived Radio.
Yeah. Still not
Revived
off the
Radio
table.
was... Right, for those who don't know this show, because we have many people who never even probably had no idea that podcast existed 3 years ago. It was Revive Thoughts, but it was old radio sermons. So Leonard Ravenhill and people who would have lived in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, who you would have listened to them, on a radio, crackly, staticky thing, and they would have had these great sermons. And it wouldn't have been Revived Thoughts because we couldn't edit them. We didn't have to get speakers, but you would have just been able to listen to these old timey preachers. And I loved them. They were great. Every sermon I listened to from that time, I thought, man, these are so good. And definitely, I definitely would consider bringing it back in some future form if possible. Not currently on the table, but Joel is right. I can be pretty ambitious. And
it's in the Disney vault.
Anyway.
It's back there somewhere. We might bring it out again one day. We'd love to bring it out one day, but at the moment, currently no plans to. But it's a possibility in the future. And then we had a daily devotion, Revive Devos, which had a great run in and of itself before it was also
did well.
moonlighted.
It was about 2.5 to 3 years before that one went down, and it was our first expansion show where we took one little portion from different speakers: Jonathan Edwards, John Calvin, Martin Luther, just lots of different, Andrew Murray, Watchman. It was a very diverse group of people that we were pulling from, but that was kind of the point. It was to get you out of your normal day-to-day people and let you hear from people maybe you weren't used to, just a little bite-sized piece of their life. And then we had one friend of ours read each of those, he did a great job. He had a wonderful voice for it. And I was the one who eventually just was like, I cannot edit all of these devotionals every single
because
time.
You're too ambitious. Because you bit off more than you can chew.
I made it work for a while. I made it work for almost 2 years.
It did, and that's the thing. Good. Like when you come up with these ideas, they're feasible in the moment, but they're not necessarily feasible long term.
I'll say this though: how many people can even keep a podcast going for 2 years? That was a daily devotional, and it went out for that long. So I'll take that as a score.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's your ambition that is largely the reason why we're still clunking along. But if there's one thing to answer your initial question that annoys me sometimes, it's when you are pushing a lot of things that I think are more than we should be focusing on at the moment.
Super true.
But I feel like we've gotten into a good groove recently.
We have.
I mean, I still do have to, daily reply to your emails for a Revive Thoughts live show and Revive Thoughts book and Revive Thoughts spinoff show. Those do still come daily, and I still do have to no, I'm just kidding.
And you know what? We need all of them. And the Church History Conference. People are now emailing us when is the Revive Thoughts History Conference? And I'm like, we got to make it happen, dude. This has got to be a thing. We've got to do it. And we're going to charge $300 a ticket. No, I'm just kidding.
What about me, Troy? Well, since we're being honest and on the table,
Okay.
what's an annoyance about me?
Actually, I did not even think about that question. I just assume I'm annoying. I don't.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Annoying things that Joel can do.
Is it that
I don't.
too chill? Yeah, I go with the
They
flow
honestly,
too
maybe
easy.
that's it. Maybe it's like this is the reverse for me. Like because I'm ambitious and I want to do everything. Maybe sometimes the fact that like you know,
don't want me
am not
holding you
able to do
back.
everything. Yeah, that's what it is. I'll go with that one, Joel. You really kept me from shining. That's No, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I feel like I'm like, oh, that was annoying. You know what, Joel? There is one thing, and this is
Tell
the
me.
tiniest thing in the world.
Uh-huh.
But there was a while back when you were sending me the recordings that I had to put up in the red circle as like waves or like MP3 instead of MP3s, and I kept
Yeah.
having to go to the audio processor and converting them, and I was like, why doesn't he send them the right way?
You never told me that.
I didn't because I kept forgetting. Like I do these things in my time. It's like 4 a.m. I didn't think to write it down, and that was it. That's the when I was trying to think. Okay, what annoys me? That was a moment where there was like a month where, and you kind of stopped doing it on your own.
Oh, well, I didn't realize I was doing it. It was like I had reinstalled one of the programs I use, and it was defaulting to a different format that I didn't realize for like a month, and then I finally realized like, oh no, that's not the format I want to be using. So it solved itself, Troy.
Yeah, it was. And that's probably the only thing. The other thing I can think of, and this, again, it's not really an annoyance. It's not even your fault. It's where I'll send you an idea and you'll be like, what is this idea? And I'm like, no, it's so obvious. It's this thing over here. And you're just kind of like, okay, Troy. And I'm like, it'd be great. Just do it. We'll work it out. And then it usually works out when we do it. But I'll be like, come on, Joel, what are you holding back for?
That's the type of faith I have in you. Oh, so yeah, for listeners, Troy will pretty regularly just send me stuff throughout any given week, and half of it I think is pretty dumb. It's pretty ridiculous. No, I mean, no, I don't fully grasp and understand the vision, and I feel like you're usually like aware of that because you want there to be a dynamic. You want it to be something I'm interested in too, and so if I'm like, I'd rather maybe talk about this than this, and you'd be like, okay, all right, let's scrap that, let's talk about this then, and then I'll be like, what is this? And then you'll have to explain to me, from the ground up everything, and be like, okay, all right, I can kind of see why you find this interesting now, I guess.
Yeah, thanks. That was actually, you helped me figure it out. So there was an annoyance. I actually don't feel like this is a thing anymore. But when we first started Revive Thoughts, I felt like your passion for the subject was not as strong. And I was like, Joel, don't you love what we're talking about? And you're like, I love that we're making a podcast about it, and that people are listening. And that was like not the same. But I feel like you've really honed in on your church history. I think being on the show for 5 years, and
I would agree with that.
You now speak pretty intelligently on it. But there was definitely in the beginning days, I don't think this was like my passion for it was surged almost immediately. I think it took you a while to catch up.
No, I would agree with that. It's definitely something. I don't know. I enjoy creativity. I enjoy from the get-go, I thought this was a really fascinating and good idea on a idea level. But admittedly, yeah, I guess for those first year or two, it was a lot of like, I'm producing a show over here and all the technical things. And I suppose like our roles do kind of lend themselves to that in some level, because you are more of the researcher and I'm more of a technical producer, and so my mind kind of analyzes things like that, where your mind analyzes things like research. So I think some of that was a byproduct of just the natural roles that we fell into.
Well, and I think too, don't underestimate that I also was like doing all the social media marketing. So I was talking to lots of people. I was interacting with lots of comments. I was doing like all of that stuff. So I was seeing like people get on fire for what we were talking about, and people get excited about it. Whereas you were not getting, hardly any of that. So for you, I can see why that would be like, you're like, other than the numbers of downloads that we get per week, like you're not really seeing the engagement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. But and you're right. I definitely have grown to really respect and admire and be fascinated with the content and subject material of church history throughout the years. But there is definitely some personality associations with that, because I think it was your idea from the get-go.
Sure.
It was always your brainchild at the beginning. So you're clearly, and just in general, like I said, I think you're a lot more self-motivated than I am when it comes to things like this. So it lends itself to you taking the flagship there, the forefront.
True. Well, Joel, okay, so what is something you've learned from Revive Thoughts that you don't think you would have probably learned had we not been doing this show together?
I honestly, and this kind of sounds like a silly answer, but I really enjoyed learning about church history. That's an oversimplification, but I don't know. Growing up, like I feel like I grew up in a Baptist church in America. Troy and I went to a conservative Bible college. I feel like they teach you about the Reformation. You learn about Luther and the Reformation. You learn about the Protestantism, and like that's like kind of the beginning of church history for a lot of people. And so I really have enjoyed kind of fleshing out the whole timeline here. What from Acts to current, what was the church doing? And the show has been really fascinating to I don't know, just become a more well-rounded, well-educated individual when it comes to church history, in addition to the Great Reformation.
True. Yeah, I would agree with that. No, it's almost kind of hard to put myself back in those shoes because it was so long ago. But when we started the show, like if you had asked me, do I know church history? I'd be like, yeah, I took church history class in college. I realized quickly we learned like 0.1% of church history in that class. We knew the name Martin Luther and maybe a couple other famous names, but that was it. And church history is so much more than just those little bits. And it's not that Martin Luther isn't important. We've done so many episodes on Martin Luther. We obviously think he's very important. But that's just, even Martin Luther, what I thought I knew about him, there was so much more to learn about him. So I would definitely agree that it's a very basic answer, but just a church history. The other thing for me that I've enjoyed learning as we do this show, it's kind of an offside thing, but learning how to teach these subjects too. I never thought I'd need to know how to teach these things and speak about these things and learn these things. But that's been really helpful to me. I actually now am able to do that kind of as a part of what I do. And I'm really grateful for it because people, they hear the word church history, they immediately shut down. They go, this is not important to me. But if you can get them past that shutdown, you can teach them a lot of amazing things that will encourage them in their faith today from the stories of these old saints and these old amazing Christians that lived before. And then something else that I think I've learned is how to preach better. Editing all these sermons for 5 years from the history's greatest preachers. And I never intended to, but I just reading that many sermons, I think it's made me a lot better preacher than I would have been had I not. And I think just seeing how all these different people from Charles Spurgeon and Jonathan Edwards to, the early guys, Augustine and Basil, to just all these different characters throughout history use a sermon and how they preach and teach. It has rubbed off on me, and not like, I'm a great preacher, but I think I'm better than I would have been if I hadn't.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I can definitely share that sentiment as well. Better than I would have been without it.
There you go.
Troy, what do we see happening in the next 5 years here? What's the future of RT hold?
Well, let me tell you. We're gonna hit it even bigger. That's for sure. We've got
bigger, better ideas. I'm gonna have to rein you in here. No.
Yeah, as I say, do you want my full scope of 100 ideas that I would like to throw at you, or the more realistic version?
I think we can. I feel like we didn't talk about this, but I feel like this is a good safe spot maybe to announce the development of a particular item. Do you think this would be an appropriate time?
Announce it, Joel. Make it happen.
And we've been asked for years, and we've been trying to do it for years. But I think this year is hopefully finally the year where we're gonna produce a book, a collection of Revive Thought sermons. My vision for it is kind of like almost like a coffee table book where you can just have something set out and it'll probably have 20 to 30 sermons in it, and a little short introductory biography page, and then the sermon that's from the show. Obviously, we're taking these content, some from the show, maybe some not from the show, some that might become a part of the show in the future. But we've always been asked to make a book over the years, and sorry, I just dropped a pair of nail clippers. And a few years ago, we actually put in some work to work towards it, but then life got in the way and things like that. But it is our goal and our desire to bring a book to the public that people can order and have and reference, and not only use as a great conversation piece, but also use practically for research and reference.
Hopefully by reading those sermons, like I said, it made me a better speaker. If you're a pastor, if you're someone in ministry, someone in ministry, hopefully reading these old sermons of the past, if they don't listen to the show, that hopefully will be something they can use. And then we regularly get messages from people who say, hey, where can I find all your sermons? We used to, in the very early days, we would put them up on our website, but that was a lot of work to put every single sermon up on the website. And so that was something I had to cut from just my list of activities to do. This will be another way to get you those sermons so they don't just go out onto an audio and you never can see them again, especially because some of our listeners are better at reading. They enjoy reading more than they enjoy listening. So this is a way for them to get these modernized sermons.
Yeah. If there is a specific episode that you want a transcript for, email us at revivethoughts@gmail.com. We'd be happy to send you the script for the show with the manuscript of the sermon and everything like that. That's no problem for us. But
every sermon that I have that I'm able to find, I always send it to you, because for us, all of this is free. We don't do this to make a bunch of money, or we're not doing any of this to just get people's hard-earned cash. We love this content. Freely it's been given us, and freely we're giving it out as much as we can too, just trying to bless people. But yeah, the other thing I think is going to be good about having this book is if people enjoy it, it's something they like. We would really love that. In my dream vision for this was actually mentioned to me by somebody else, who said, you have so many great sermons from history. You could make subjects, like you could do sermons on grief, sermons on love, sermons on, theological topics, and certain these different areas of people's life where you could read, 8 sermons from, 8 different centuries theoretically, and how they've been covering that same subject throughout those years. And I was like, that is such a cool idea. I personally would love to have that book sitting on my shelf where it's just sermons on hopefulness, and you could just see all these different speakers throughout the centuries who have preached on that, or sermons on Thanksgiving, or sermons on all these different subjects that have been tackled for centuries. And that's my dream of what this would so 5 years from now, if the book stuff goes well, I would love for people to be able to have those subjects that are near and dear to their heart and be able to see the different sermons that have covered that. Because on Revived Thoughts, we end up having sermons that cover the same idea multiple times. And there are lots of different, many pastors have tackled some of the same subjects over and over again. It would be pretty amazing to see those things go out to the world.
And then, coming 2025 will be our Revived Thoughts live event that will orchestrate. No. This is what we should do. We should put a date on it and then work towards it, and then we can't not do it because
that's true.
It's already out there.
I mean, look, if we were going to do it summer of 2025, I will be back in the States, Lord willing. So if it was going to happen, summer of 2025 would be when we need to do it. So we just need to find a location and a bunch of people who want to come to that, and maybe a couple people who could speak at it, and bada bing, we've got ourselves a live event.
We need to look at the analytics of our listener base throughout America and see what the most densely populated area is, and then have that as the venue, location.
Boom, there it is.
And then, see if everyone else wants to make a road trip out there. We'll make a whole thing out of it.
And maybe somebody listening is going, I have a church, you should come do it there. And then that will be how it happens, because that's probably how it realistically happens. So that would be something I've always think I've heard there have been a couple, not many, but a couple people who have taken our sermons and preached them live to their congregation. Like, they didn't pretend they were theirs. They were like, hey, I'm reading this sermon from the past. I think it's great. I wanted to read it to you today. And it's just amazing. They always tell us that the audience comes up and was like, wow, I can't believe that. Specifically in thinking Dietrich Bonhoeffer's sermon on forgiveness, but I know there's been a couple others that it's just powerful. These sermons work. I mean, they still work. I think it'd be really cool to be a part of an audience to get to listen to these sermons preached together and just that would be something that would be just really amazing. So yeah, I'm all about that. And we could combo with our church history conference, have a couple other friends of church history come out and speak a little here and there, and we'll make a day of it. It'd be great. Everyone would love it, and everyone would know that it would be very cheap because of my very strong opinion on church history conference tickets. So there you go.
Yeah, one of the things that we've also talked about, I don't know if and when or how this would ever happen, but 5 years ago, if you asked me if we'd be making the show, I don't know if I would have known that either. So who knows what the next 5 years brings? But Troy and I have learned a lot over the years. Troy particularly, again, has become quite the expert in this area, and we've really wanted to make some type of like church history video curriculum course that the public could have in view. Again, I don't know if you guys listened to Troy and Elise's episode on things. What did you title it? How not to teach church history?
How not to teach church history, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of ways that like we feel like modern society is not doing church history justice. And I don't know, is it prideful or delusional to think that like, I don't know. I do feel like we've tapped into. I don't know. That sounds so prideful, but there is.
No,
sorry, you go.
No, I think the way that so often church history is laid out for people is it's oftentimes theologians at seminaries who are really excited about the theology, and then they learn the church history afterwards. So they present church history almost through a theological lens, but the thing about church history is it's kind of outside that. Like we all of our great theories and stuff are great and wonderful, but if I'm putting it in science terms, like theoretical physics is oftentimes the theology. The laboratory is where church history happens. And as much as we love, I love great theology, and I think absolutely some theology is better than others and all that, there's still a little bit of a fact of no matter whose camp you're in, there are people from the other camp who have done great things for God, and you got to just go, oh man, I wish my guys maybe had sometimes done those great things too. And that's, I think that's why people who love history naturally, but even history itself is often taught wrong. So I don't think it's prideful to say that maybe we could help in making church history.
We have something to contribute.
And,
I guess that would be a better way of saying that. Yeah.
We came into church history because of a love of church history, because of a love of sharing stories. And I think we've learned a lot of stories throughout the years because of that. And I think those stories have made it, I know that for a fact in my classes, they have made an impact where people have, I had a parent tell me yesterday that their daughter said he's like quoting me from class basically, or like quoting the daughter talking about my class, where they said he's teaching church history, but somehow he makes it apply for today. And like, it just feels like it's relevant to my life. And I was like, that is the goal. Like, that's what I want to hear students say. So that was really heartfelt to hear that. I'd love to make that video curriculum with you, Joel. And I'd love to be able to see if we can create something. And you know what? Like, this is going to sound stupid, and this is where you're going to go, Troy. That's the line. That was the ambitious draw. But there's this YouTube video series called The Bible Project, and they make these cool little videos that are animated that tell Bible-y things.
I've heard of it.
I've always thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had something like that for church history, where it's the little scribbles and the drawings and all the animations that are so easily accessible, but it's telling you about men like Charles Spurgeon. It's telling you about lives of people like Jonathan Edwards, and making those things super accessible to people today. Because I think that one of the biggest problems we have with church history is that it's locked away in books and it feels inaccessible. And that's something that needs to change, where we need to find a way to get the content into people's hands easier, because people would love it if they knew how to get to it, I think.
Let's start with a 6-part video series on church history overview first, and
sure.
we'll see what happens from there.
We'll work our way towards an animation studio. Yeah, I mean, we got to start somewhere, right? And we'll maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if the audience is ready to see what you look like. I can hide behind the camera, but the whole world, I don't know. The radio voice,
like,
never looks like what you think they look like. if you've ever seen.
To be fair, our pictures are on our website, and we did used to do church history
but
trivia shows, which were live. So I mean, they could have seen us then.
I bet you less than 3% of these listeners have ever seen a picture of us.
That's probably true.
I'd be curious.
Well, maybe we don't want them to see what we look like. Maybe we're a lot uglier than they're picturing.
I mean, almost certainly, right? Like, people, they've been listening to our voices.
I doubt anyone will go, wow, much more handsome than I was picturing. So there's that.
Right there.
Maybe we should do animated. That way we're hidden behind video cartoons. Like, isn't that what people do nowadays when they're not confident about their looks? They're the cartoon version of you.
Yeah. We used to get comments that we sound quite a bit alike. I haven't heard that in a long time. I mean, I can see it, but we don't look anything alike.
I am almost 100% convinced my students that sometimes my students will look up my show because I don't talk about it like a ton, but it will come up in class and they'll look up my show. One of my students, sweet lady, said, and I quote, "I like listening to your show at night because it helps me fall asleep." I was like, just like class, isn't it? Helps you get right back to that place. But I almost am guaranteeing, I think they thought my voice was your voice for some reason because they kept saying that I sounded like someone else. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Joel you're listening to. But there's just a difference between when you hear my voice speaking in a classroom and when you hear my voice speaking like right next to a microphone. Like our voice, when you guys started listening to Elise, I remember you guys were like, Elise sounds so different on Martyrs and Missionaries than she does when we're hanging out with her. And it's like, well, because you don't have Elise speaking very professionally and carefully right into your ear like you do when you're listening on a microphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, right. Audio only stuff's weird in that way.
Yeah. Well, Joel, I had one more question for you for the day. And one more. My last one for you, at least, was going to be, if you could meet, after doing this show for 5 years, if you could meet anyone in church history, who would you want to sit down for like a lunch or a tea time with?
What are my parameters here? Like,
well, they're alive, so we're bringing them back from the dead. It's not their body. We'll put it back.
Just prop a corpse up at a table.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, have a conversation with them. If you could meet any of them, they're there to hang out with you and talk with you, answer questions, give life advice, whatever you're looking for.
I think I'd probably. I'm trying to decide. It would probably be between. I think I'd probably go back. I think I'd probably try to get back as close as I could to time of Christ. So I'd probably find like a Basil or Augustine or something like that. I mean, are we limited to people that we've covered on the show?
I didn't even think of that answer, but that's so smart. Yeah, I'm gonna go straight to like Onesimus from the first century. That's clever, Joel. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah. I mean, if Jesus is, I'm assuming, off the table. We haven't covered.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Can I just, you want to, so I told you my annoyance, my one half annoyance with you. Let me give my annoyance with the audience. Okay, I run the Twitter. And I will put up polls, and I'll say things like, "Which John would you, which Jonathan would you meet? Would you want to hear a sermon from?" And I'll be like, Jonathan Edwards, John Calvin, John Wesley, John Owen, or something like that. And every time, without fail, it's a poll. You vote on the poll. It's not hard, people. Someone goes, John the Baptist. Or if you could meet anybody from church history for lunch, that same question I just gave you, and they'll go, Jesus. And I'm like, okay, yeah. No, everyone wants to meet Jesus. Come on.
Hey,
okay,
that's
people,
on you for not defining the perimeters better.
Because sometimes I actually will. I literally will say, I will sometimes say, from this poll, because I've gotten so tired of this, I'll say, from this poll, who would you pick? And they'll still put John the Baptist. And I'm like, read the instructions.
The internet's a big place, okay? I mean, you can't hold everyone.
I know. I literally, like, people will fight with me about stuff all the time online. I don't care about that. But for some reason, this poll thing drives me crazier than anything. I'll show my phone to my wife, and I'll be like, why do they do this every time? The instructions are so simple. Why can you not just click the button or give an opinion?
I feel like that's me whenever I try to post something on Facebook Marketplace, which I dread doing because 99% of the people just blatantly ask questions that are in like the first line of the description, and I don't even reply to them anymore. Like, are you so lazy? You literally have not read the first line. Like, I don't believe you have money. Like, I think you're just like you're wasting everyone's time. I don't think you're the type of person that's smart enough to have money to buy this product if you literally haven't even read the full description. So I'm not engaging with you.
It's true. That's exactly what it's like. I don't know how these people go through life living like this. Like, I just incapable of doing. Anyway, all right. So that's my annoyance. I love you, audience. I love all of you who listen, and I don't think any of these people actually do. So that's why I don't feel. But
yeah, those aren't our listeners. Those aren't people listening to.
You know
the
what?
show.
I just almost guaranteed though some of our listeners are going to start doing this just to annoy me, and you know what? It'll work. I'm going to.
You brought it on yourself.
There it is. Yep, it's gonna happen. But anyway, so that's and the thing is, the funny thing is, if they have controversial opinions, if they want to fight about theology and stuff in the comments, I'd have no problem with that. That doesn't bother me hardly at all. But it's just stupid. It's click the button. Okay, it's not hard, people. All right, Joel, what were you gonna say? Oh, so you went with going back. For me, I would pick probably George Mueller. I feel like that guy would be of all the people. We've learned about so many amazing people, and it would be. It's an impossible list. I mean, Charles Spurgeon. There's so many amazing people, but. There's something about old faithful George Mueller running that orphanage that I would have loved to have had tea with him. I feel like I would have walked, or David Livingston. That's another one too. But I just feel like I would have walked around that like
or Taylor, anyone from those eras.
Taylor. Yeah, there's some amazing people that have lived, and obviously it's impossible to narrow it down. But for me, maybe it's just a personal connection. But I really look up to George Mueller, and I would have loved to have been like, so how did you go through all you did just run it on faith? What it is.
I also
the funny thing is, he'd probably tell me what he's already said in his books.
Yeah. But I think of George Mueller, and there's that old like scraggly photo. He's one of the few people that we have a photo of. And he's just like this ancient, old, scraggly bearded man. And he looks like he just would have like the most like gentle, soothing voice ever. You know, like if you were to sit across from him and he'd just lean back and be like, "Let me tell you about my life."
He just looks like he'd be a very joyful, pleasant person to have a lunch with. He just looks like
I have no reason to base great time.
Yes. And I feel like you would just walk out of that lunch feeling so loved, and you'd walk away like, man, what a great guy. I just think that's the kind of lunch it would be. So that's probably high up on my list of lunches with people would be him. So there you go. That's my answer. And all right, Joel, any final thoughts as we kind of close our 5-year of this show going strong?
No, yeah. Here's to 5 more, right? We gotta expand the empire now, right? We gotta plan our conventions and such. But no, I'm excited
by the way,
for what the future holds.
Me too. I forgot to announce. So wasn't going to tell you this. You don't, but we have officially crossed 900,000 downloads across our studio, which at this point is basically 900,000 downloads split between Revived Thoughts and Martyrs and Missionaries, which is pretty cool.
Does that include our previous hosting platforms?
That does, yes. It includes all of our work to this day. So we are almost. I mean, we will hit 1 million downloads not too far off in the future, which. Wow. For a podcast that we never got a big backing from anybody. Neither of us are famous from people who, we don't have anything like that going on. That is nothing small. Okay. And especially because let's be honest, we are not the world's greatest marketers. Like we could have done a lot better. So this is really just, it is really a blessing that so many people are listening and have shared it with people, and that we are still getting emails and comments and new listeners talking all the time. Like this is, we definitely cannot say it as us, because we are not good enough at that side of things to justify that we could be hitting 1 million downloads on these shows. So that's been pretty awesome.
For sure. All right, I think that's going to do it for this 5-year celebratory episode.
Okay, this is Troy and Joel, and this is Revived Thoughts.